Hi, we're Maren and Angela of Homeschool Unrefined. Over the past 25 years, we've been friends, teachers, homeschool parents, and podcasters together. With our master's degrees and 20 years combined homeschooling, we're here to rethink homeschooling, learning, and education with an inclusive and authentic lens.
At Homeschool Unrefined, we prioritize things like giving yourself credit, building strong connections, respectful parenting, interest-led playing and learning differences, mental health, self-care, and listening to and elevating LGBTQ+ and BIPOC voices.
We are here to encourage and support you, whether you're a new homeschooler, a veteran, you love curriculum, you're an unschooler, whether all your kids are at home or all your kids are in school or somewhere in between. Wherever you are in your journey, we're the voice in your head telling you you're doing great, and so are your kids.
This is episode 201, Homeschool and ADHD with Tanya Faisal. Tanya and I talked about lots of things about ADHD, what it actually is, what it looks like, and how we can support our kids with ADHD. And then we'll end like we always do with our LTWs, Loving This Week.
Before we get to that, we wanted to just let everyone know about our December class in Patreon. It's going to be called How We Winter Break. It's all about the importance of taking a winter break and our best tips for doing so. We're super excited about that because we really are passionate about it.
We love breaks.
We're passionate about breaks.
We are.
Okay, it is Tuesday, December 6th at 1 o'clock. If you join us on Patreon at the $10 level, 1 o'clock Central, you will get information and a Zoom link for that.
Yes. We know finding a curriculum that meets your needs is tough, and that's why we're excited to partner with Blossom and Root. Blossom and Root is a nature-focused secular homeschool curriculum focusing on creativity, science, nature, literature, and the arts. Blossom and Root has been gently encouraging and supporting homeschooling families around the globe since 2016. Blossom and Root currently offers curricula for pre-K through 5th grade, with new levels being added in the future. Additionally, a 3-volume inclusive U.S. history curriculum told from a variety of viewpoints is currently in development. As of August 2022, Volume 1 is available for purchase, and Volume 2 is available on pre-sale. All profits from this history curriculum, A River of Voices, will be used to support storytellers and artists from historically excluded communities. You can find samples, scope and sequences, and information about each of their levels online at blossomandroot.com. You can also find them on Instagram at Blossom and Root. Blossom and Root has created a special discount for our listeners. Use the code HSUnrefined15 at checkout for 15% off your purchase.
We're so happy to be partnering with OutSchool this season because they are our favorite way to outsource. We know that kids who love to learn don't just prepare for the future, they create it. That's why OutSchool has reimagined online learning to empower kids and teens to expand their creativity, wonder, and knowledge. Empathetic, passionate teachers encourage learners ages 3 to 18 to explore their interests, connect with diverse peers from around the world, and take an active role in leading their learning. OutSchool has created a world filled with endless possibilities for every schooling journey. Explore over 140,000 fun and flexible live online classes to find the right fit for your family, and join us as we set learning free. Sign up today at outschooler.me/homeschoolunrefined and get up to $20 off your first class when you enroll with the code UNREFINED.
Angela and I love using technology to teach specific skills, and that's one reason we are excited to introduce you to Night Zookeeper. Is your child a reluctant writer? Do they struggle with reading? If your answer to either of these questions is yes, then Night Zookeeper may be just what you're looking for. Night Zookeeper is an online learning program for children ages 6 to 12 years old that uses a gamified and creative approach to help to keep kids engaged and focused on developing awesome reading and writing skills, all while having fun at the same time. Some of the features we love include the educational games, the personalized feedback on writing from real tutors, and the super safe community pages where children can work with each other and learn together. If Night Zookeeper sounds like the perfect learning program for your child, you can try it for free by clicking on the link in the show notes. When you register, you'll get a 7-day risk-free trial as well as a huge 50% off annual subscription. That's a great deal if you ask me.
We are so excited to welcome back Tanya Faisal, who is the creator of the YouTube channel Project Happy Home. Tanya is a doctor and a lawyer turned homeschool parent who talks a lot about homeschool, curriculum, and ADHD and much more on her YouTube channel and on her social media. So please enjoy this conversation with Tanya.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
It is my pleasure to be back.
Yes. All right. So maybe we should just start with a reminder. You can tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your story, and what you are doing now.
So I've been on social media, in the greater world for, I don't know, about 7 years now. I got on right as we started homeschooling. And I started my homeschool journey because my son was, having trouble in kindergarten. And we had explored what could be causing that trouble and, found out that it was ADHD. And as all of that was happening, I thought it would be nice to find community. And a lot of the information that I found initially was online and from moms who were going through it. And sharing our story really was out of gratitude to them. It was I realized how much that helped me. And I thought, okay, so if I can share my experience, then it can help other people in the same way, as a mom to mom kind of, parent to parent level of communication. So since then, I've continued the YouTube channel and the Instagram account under Project Happy Home. And we just talk about all the day-to-day stuff, but also I focus on ADHD a little bit because that's really where our journey started. So
did you know a lot about ADHD before you started homeschooling, or did you have knowledge of it? Or
I come from a medical background, so I had knowledge of it, but I had no personal knowledge of ADHD, and it was, I think that even in the last 5 years, we've come a long way in decreasing the stigma behind these different learning styles and learning abilities and learning, just modes of brain wiring. I think we've come a long way in being able to be open about what challenges our kids are facing and what challenges we are facing, as adults.
Absolutely. Okay. So you started really studying because you had a personal, your son, you realized he had ADHD. And so you did a lot of research and communication and communicating with other parents and things like that.
Yeah. Because all the things I had read officially about ADHD can come from very different camps of thinking about whether you're going to medicate or not medicate, whether it even exists or it doesn't exist. But I found that the most helpful things that I learned were from parents, whether it was on chat groups on those official websites about ADHD or whether it was YouTube videos or Instagram accounts, because I think that while professionals can have a lot of opinions about what is physiologically causing this and how we can treat it and everything, I think parents have the issue of so how do I get my child to put their clothes in the hamper?
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to get to that too. We're going to get to things like that in just a minute. But first, let's maybe just start at the beginning and let's talk about what ADHD actually is, because it sometimes feels intangible. It's well, it's these behaviors. Is it just these behaviors? That's what I think. There's this perception, but what really is it?
So that's, I think, a hard question to nail down, because there is disagreement about what it is if you're talking about it from a physiologic standpoint, right?
Yep.
There's still a lot of medical disagreement about whether you actually have physiologic changes in the brain or whether you don't. I find that amazing that that's still up in the air.
I do too. I think it's just amazing to me that there isn't more information out there or research or work on this right now. I think especially now, but because it is, from my own study and research, and you can tell me what you've also learned, because this is how we do it. We kind of just say, well, this is what I've learned and this is what you've learned and let's talk about it. But it's, for me, what I think about first is is a differently wired brain. And especially I think about the prefrontal cortex, which is at the, the very front of your brain, and how it's often less developed. And so it's possibly delayed. And a lot of that prefrontal cortex part of your brain coincides with executive functioning, emotional regulation, kind of logic, and understanding those, understanding logic sometimes, and things like that. Is that what you have also found?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of research to indicate, regardless of what is actually going on with neurotransmitters and the way the brain is developing and maturing. I think that they've definitely established a lack of working memory in these kids.
That too, yes.
Working memory being that exactly what you were talking about, that being able to take this short-term knowledge, this short-term instruction, this short-term visual, and transforming it into a list of steps that, if this, then all of these things, that connection. And that has a lot to do with prefrontal cortex and how it connects to all of your other lobes, really.
Right.
So I think regardless of what's going on, I think we should focus as parents on how does that manifest for us in our kids? What is actually happening? Because like you said, we can ignore, we can talk about the behaviors like the fidgeting or the lack of attention and sort of forget about all the other pieces that come with that lack of working memory. The reaction times being slow to someone's facial expression, the inability to realize that you've missed a step, in what you were supposed to do next, and just all of these things that can be perceived as disrespectful and lazy and, irresponsible, just being actual, brain wiring, issues, right?
Yes.
So
that has helped me a lot over the past few years to understand that it is to me quite physiological instead of bad choices, or just a tendency to not be able to do things you don't want to do. You have to step it up, And so it's much easier to understand when it is just, it does to me seem like now a much more physiological and real tangible thing.
I think people should realize it, it is a disability that if you are an adult and in a workplace and you can, apply for accommodations. So we all hesitate to use the word disability, but I think it's important to realize that medically and psychologically speaking, it has qualified itself to receive help for adults, people who are functioning, working members of society. And I think that is important because yes, labels matter, but I think it's important because it's a real thing. The thing that offends me the most is when people say that ADHD isn't real and that it's just behavioral and just choices. And I think to know that it's recognized officially by people who give out money, that's a hard call for the government, I think that that's important to realize it has passed that bar. That discussion should be over.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. You are so right. And I do think I get why it feels like I said, it does feel a little bit intangible. And I think sometimes that is because it looks so different for everyone too. So it might not necessarily be just, not being able to complete a task or something. It might, like you said, it might be more working memory, not being able to remember or, memorize things that you need to memorize, or it might be, emotional dysregulation or things like that. So it's sometimes hard to pinpoint this person definitely has ADHD because they do this, and this, because it can look so different. But also that's why probably getting a test is really important, so that you can identify it and move forward. So
I was 95% sure that my child had ADHD when I took them in for their very expensive testing, which wasn't covered by insurance.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. And it was a huge relief to me to know that he met these criteria, and it wasn't just me thinking, things about his behavior and stuff and just guessing. Even as somebody with a medical background, I wanted to know exactly, to the best of our ability, what was going on so that I could hone how we addressed him and how we lived with him, and how we as parents like adjusted our
Yes,
behavior to
yes.
best help him.
Yes, I I agree with you 100%. It felt so good for me too. I have kids with ADHD, and since then I've been tested and have ADHD too. And so also, even though I knew, same with you, probably 95% sure this is ADHD, it does feel validating. And also there's official things that can happen now too. Like you said, there are accommodations that can happen now for
Right.
sure. And so I feel, yeah, I am so glad we all got tested. So, and but you're right, it is really expensive, and I think that is something that I really hope changes in the future for people, for sure. So, we've talked about a lot of the maybe things that are kind of hard for ADHD, or maybe we call them symptoms, or things that you see that may be challenges for people with ADHD. What are some of the strengths that you've seen in anyone with ADHD, maybe your son or anybody else?
I think, like you were saying, the weaknesses are the things that people pick up on the first. And just to go over, if anybody wants to know a list of those, it's easy to find online. But a lot of the things people notice first are in school, like when a child first has to sit on the line and they have issues sitting on the line, literally, and also paying attention and following directions, completing activities, a lot of behavior and talking that can be deemed disrespectful. I think if you flip a lot of that behavior on its head, though, what it comes from is their strengths, which is, not wanting to be on the line for a very long time and to want to be creating and producing and doing things and actively learning. And then, in terms of the disrespect and stuff, sometimes it's just kids being really questioning a lot of things, like questioning, we say questioning authority, but I think sometimes they're just literally questioning the direction, like without any disrespect intended. They are truly wondering, like, why is this the choice that you've made in this situation? Like, why do I have to do it first and not second? Why do I have to stop this and do this now? And I think sometimes when kids with ADHD appear disrespectful, they're actually just being critical thinkers, really.
Absolutely. Yep.
And they don't gauge that your face is showing irritation quickly enough to reroute their next question. In a school environment and stuff. I think sometimes when you ask the first question, everyone can be like, okay, maybe you're just asking, but then they ask another one and another one that seems equally disrespectful. But I don't think that's it. I think that's the reaction time thing coming in, where they're not reading your face for disapproval. They're just going on with their next thought.
Well, and I also think kids with ADHD, I don't want to just say kids, people with ADHD can be highly motivated when they connect their big why to what they're doing. And so I think for them, it's like a child might just be saying, I really need this information or order for me to move forward.
Exactly. They're actually telling you what they need.
They're telling you what they need.
They're trying to be, I think in one way, it's easier to look at it as they're trying to be respectful. They're trying to find the reason that gets them there.
They're searching.
No child,
I do think that.
No child wants to be yelled at, even if they have this prior knowledge. Like, I get yelled at a lot, and kids with ADHD get reprimanded so much more than kids without. And that's like a heartbreaking number of times more. But, and I'm not going to call myself perfect at all. I definitely will be impatient with certain things because it's a continuous kind of answering of the question. You're not going to have, as a parent of a child with ADHD, you're never going to be in the situation where I just say things the first time and my children just, like ducklings go in a row. And that's something, to get used to. I always say that the most important thing with your kids, whether they have ADHD or not, right, is that relationship. Like,
absolutely,
what do they feel when they look at you, and what do you feel when you look at them? Like, is it like this waiting for like disapproval, waiting for like disobedience, or is it assuming the best of them? Like, I think of all the things I've ever come up with for myself, how we come up with these things, these coping things. I came up with this mnemonic ABC, and so the A is just always ask the first time. Like, don't expect them to not be doing it or not have done it or not be listening. Like, don't yell the first time, don't be annoyed the first time. Just ask like you would ask a friend or anything. And I always think when you ask, try to like touch them or really make sure that they're listening. Like, they are not kids who are going to respond well when you shout from, downstairs to upstairs and expect them to like just get it together.
Definitely.
So the
Yep.
A is just always ask and
Mhm.
ask like a nice person, you yourself,
Right. Right.
And then
Yeah.
the second one is the B is just believe when you're asking that this is going to happen this time, like as best as you can, like believe that they have the best of intentions and you do, and we're going to meet there, and it might not happen the first time you ask or the second or the third, but you have to believe that will
Continue
like you
to
have
believe.
to,
Yep.
you have to believe that they want to work with you. They
Right.
want to be like the best they can be because they do. Like they do. And then
Absolutely.
the C for me is always chuck it. If it doesn't work, or if you have a negative interaction or like you messed up and said things you didn't mean, or they just, melted down and had things come out of their mouth that they don't mean or whatever, just chuck it. Like don't carry it with you into the next thing that you have to do together and the next thing and the next thing, because it's in the end a small thing. Like you shouldn't feel horrible about yourself because you had a meltdown, because it's hard to be the parent of any neuroatypical kid. It is.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then
give yourself credit for that.
give yourself some grace. And it's so much easier to give them grace when you allow yourself some,
Absolutely. Yep.
So
yes, absolutely. And I was going to say something about, I love the ABC, and always ask is so great, because I think what can happen, especially with my children with ADHD, messes happen all the time. I mean, I have, experiments are going on all the time. Why? Because it's tactile. It is lead. It is not, there's not necessarily a plan ahead of time. It's just things are happening and question. I think one of the strengths of someone with ADHD is they are often very inquisitive and eager to find answers. And so I think that's happening a lot in our house. And so that does create messes sometimes. And also there's a lot of creativity around people with ADHD. And so I think there's art projects everywhere too, and things like that. And so to always ask to get clean, to let's clean this up. Could we clean this up now is great, because when it happens a lot, sometimes my first reaction is, oh my goodness, again? Oh my goodness. And so I think this is really great to just start with always ask. You don't have to elevate it to, level 7 right away. Let's start with 1, let's just let's stay down there in the lower levels of, your emotions, because I think we know this is going to happen. And there, it's because of the strengths. And then I also think my kids' strengths are definitely in the beginning of those projects, and the strength is not in the cleaning up of those projects. That still needs to happen, of course. We need to build that skill and practice it and continue to work on it. But my expectation should not necessarily be that they're going to be as good at cleaning up as they are at starting this really interesting project. That's probably just not realistic. And so if my expectation is they get that good at cleaning up, I'm going to forever be frustrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to talk to them, especially as they get older, but really even as young as 5 and 6, about how do they think you should get there. Like if you have a goal, like if they did this big invention box project and now you have like painter's tape and paint and cardboard pieces and everything scattered everywhere, and you're feeling your blood start to like boil a little, because you're at the end of a long day or whatever, and you have to do other things. I still think it's important to like sit with them and be like, okay, so like, I think you can say what your needs are. Like, I need this to be cleaned up so that I can feel okay. And, so that we can get through everything, do other things in this living room space, and ask them though, because they are so creative, right?
Yes.
Like, what do you think would be the best way that we could do this? Or what do you think would be the fastest way? Or do you think if we set a timer, like who could finish their half of the room fastest? And honestly, that makes it fun for them and for you. Like it allows you to not be this ogre who's always upset, it allows you to just be in it with them. Like, this is a problem, but we're going to do this together. Like we are going to be together when we figure
we're
this
in this
out.
together. It's not just you clean this up. This is your issue. Yeah. This is us together. It is a team. Right. And then another thing that, I was thinking of when you were just saying that, Tanya, is that I've often like maybe started with, when they were much younger, they could help with a few things. Cleaning up, not the whole cleanup. That's overwhelming. It would deter them from ever doing a project again. If they had to do the whole thing, even with me. So it was like they could do 10%, 20% of it or whatever. And we have worked up over the years for that. I don't know, the stamina to clean up a project, or stamina to do anything that is of low interest to them.
Exactly.
We have to build that up. It can't be something that they just take on 100% right away without, I think, almost like some scaffolding or
like
support.
Just guideposts along the way. This is that if first this, then this is tough. That is that working memory piece. If this, then this, like this happens, then this happens, and then has a. And when they're little, like charts help and visuals and stuff. I think when they're older, I always have the high five. I think I talked about this last time, where everybody's, responsible for 5 things before they see me in the morning. And you get a high five. I'm just like, high five.
Awesome.
And that's all I say, instead of saying, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Like they know what the 5 are. Everybody has it listed on their bathroom mirror. And like, that's
great.
And you start the day with a high five, which I think is really nice. And if they haven't done it, you haven't used any negative words to show them that you haven't. You just ask like high five. And then if they can't, they're like, they just run back up, which is really not, negative. It's like them having a code word almost.
It's a code. I love that. It's a code word instead of saying, oh, go back and brush your teeth. Because all kids get told what to do a lot, just innately, like whether we want that to happen or not, it just is. That's the way it is. Kids get told what to do a lot. Someone with ADHD, maybe even more, because we have to repeat things a lot, or, they forget, or they get off task, or they don't want to do it, or things like that. So it just can multiply and multiply. And it could be a day full of telling a child what to do. And so I love that as much as we can minimize that, the better. And so if there's something written down, that is so great, because they do need the reminders. They will not remember 5 things in their brain, but they will remember to go look at the 5 things. So anything that can be automated like that is so helpful.
And things like, I feel like the bane of my existence is socks in general. Every time I bring up socks, I'm like, how many problems can I have with socks? But beyond them being left everywhere, one of our issues was getting out of the door and always having people who had not put their socks on, and then having this whole thing of like me seeing they were putting sneakers on without socks and being like, take off your sneakers and go put socks on. And so now I just keep a basket of socks.
Oh, that's great.
Right there, of everybody's size. And every time we do the laundry, I just like toss a sock in there, because that way we've automated this step. So, I've established people have trouble remembering their socks. And so now the socks are always there. Now that whole thing is eliminated. It took the barest amount of effort on my part. And honestly, if they grow up and they still have an issue remembering socks, hopefully they remember to do this.
Exactly.
And then it solves the problem,
Yes.
I find like a lot of people will say like, well, how long are you going to be around? And you can't do all these things for them. And I'm like, I'm teaching them how best to do it for themselves too.
They can absolutely do this their whole lives.
They can absolutely have a Post-it with 5 things on their bathroom mirror for the rest of their lives.
Yes,
it's not a problem.
Yes, exactly. And we have to think outside the box on that, because I think we've been kind of trained. We just do life this way. This is what people do. People don't have baskets of socks in their, in their entryway, but they can. Why can't they? And so I think you could call that almost an accommodation, but I don't even necessarily like the word accommodation, because it seems like you're making an exception for a difference or something. But I think this is just like we can all do things. Yes, it's a life hack. It's just we all do things that make our lives easier. we put our coffee right next to the coffee pot. So we don't have to walk across the kitchen to go get our coffee in the morning. And so like, we're just making life easier in other ways that maybe someone else hasn't thought of before. And I think that
I'm
is
sure
really great.
once upon a time we didn't have broom closets, but now we do,
right?
to keep the broom there.
Yes.
Where we will be able to get it easily. I think it's the same thing. And we have a lot of hangups about making life easier. We really do. Like, I mean, even as adults, people are like, ugh, like, do you really need that extra thing? Or do you really need that? Like, I'm like, why are you so upset that someone has a special way of cleaning baseboards? Like, if it makes them clean their baseboards, hooray, like this extra tool or whatever it is that makes you a little bit less stressed as you live life. I think no one should denigrate that.
No kidding. I can't even agree with you more. I think you're so right. And it also just takes away the shame of what a lot of kids might feel having ADHD. It just takes away that shame. Like, instead of saying like, I can't even go get the right socks at the right time, I can't even do that. That can feel really bad for a kid. But really, it takes away that whole issue. It's like not even an issue anymore. And I think we can translate that into homeschool in so many ways too. I want to think about kids when they can't sit still. Like you talked about, they can't like sit on the line, but at homeschool, it might be they can't sit on the couch. They can't sit at the kitchen table or whatever. But I do want to encourage you that if you have a child like that, even if they haven't been diagnosed with ADHD, maybe they don't even have ADHD, but a child who can't sit still, sometimes their brains are going so, they're thinking about a million things. Maybe they're even so excited about whatever's going on, and their reaction to that is moving around. So sometimes that's the case, but then also sometimes moving around is what is needed in order for their brain to focus.
Yeah.
So it could be, one or the other. And so I think that's a life hack for homeschoolers is to just think about how we don't all have to be doing homeschool the same way either. Just like we don't always have to have our socks in our drawers. We don't always have to do the plan that we originally had for homeschooling. Our children might be telling us they need something else. Yeah. And so it's not a bad thing. It's actually great. It's great.
I think it's
You're
very
figuring
freeing.
out. Yeah.
I think one thing that's good about social media is that we have so much access to different people's experiences.
Yes.
But another thing on the flip side is that it's bad, right? Particularly when it's like a visual format like Instagram, where so many things can look so beautiful and so
exactly.
Little House on the Prairie and all of this stuff. And I think that it can make us feel bad about the socks in the hallway or whatever we're doing.
Yes.
That is working for us maybe, but not picture friendly. And people have different experiences. Like people have different family dynamics and different ages in their homeschool. There's so many things beyond ADHD or any neurodivergence that makes it different. I think I parent my kids pretty much the same because of my eldest having ADHD. Like I think I'm much better at being nice. Honestly, like that's the word, because my eldest has ADHD. Like I think I had expectations for what motherhood would be like and what my children would be like and what my house would be like that are wildly different from what has happened. And in many ways, it's been for the good, like because my son having ADHD has taught me that, one, the way I'm perceiving a situation is not the same as the way someone else is perceiving the situation.
Yes.
That is very clearly brought home.
So true.
And that I can like pause and try to meet them in a helpful way, in a non-judgy way. Like I really try hard. I think I used to say things like, you always, you always don't, or you always do. This negative thing would follow. And that I still do things wrong, but that I don't say anymore ever to anybody.
Right.
Because I think that it's really important to tell them, like we are growing, all of us together. I always tell my son, I'm exactly as old a mom as you are a kid. Like, so think of us in the same way that way. Like I'm learning these things and so are you. And we are all moving forward together. I think we can all say that we can get better at things without saying that there's any perfect place to get to or that we're terrible where we are.
Yes.
I think that's important to know.
Yeah, definitely. And I always think what I'm doing for my kids who are neurodivergent, it's actually good for everyone, and vice versa. What we're doing for everyone should be good for the person who's neurodivergent too. So I think we need to also I think we've kind of narrowed our idea of maybe expectations and the way we even, I don't know, communicate with each other or treat each other, that I think can be much more inclusive. And thanks to our neurodivergent, the neurodivergent people in this world who's like, they're helping us understand even just how to, I don't know, be better communicators with everyone.
Yeah.
So
I think, no, I wanted to say, like, the one thing I would mention too is one reality of being a parent of someone with ADHD is that, they will take negative comments so much harder than a neurotypical child would. And that, I think, as a parent, because I know that I have said things that I would take back if I could. And I have responded in ways that I could take back if I could. And I have seen how much that affected my kid. And then me responding in a way that was even more frustrated because I felt like he shouldn't have had that response. Like, it shouldn't be this extreme that I said this negative thing. And so it was like piling like one negative thing on top of another, like the frustration with the initial event or whatever that happened. And then my frustration with his response. And I think really learning about how neuroatypical kids, particularly with ADHD, can have this rejection sensitivity dysphoria, this incredible feeling of pain and just anguish, really, about being reprimanded, is really important to acknowledge and learn about. And I think when we realize how harmful some of the things we do can be, as caring parents, which most of us are, it really shifts you. Like, always remembering that shifts my responses into like a more even keeled response.
I think that is so important to remember. I was going to just ask you about RSD, or rejection sensitivity dysphoria, because I think it is real. It is very real. And I think that for many reasons, it's very real. And one of those would be that there's just a lot of, just culturally, there's a lot of rejection for a child who, learns differently. And so there is the sensitivity towards it. And I think their brains are also geared towards that sensitivity too. And I've seen that a lot in our house. And I do think like it's amazing how I have always thought of myself as being very encouraging, very positive, accepting and everything, and have realized I have so much, there are just so many opportunities to continue to get better at that. Even things that I never would have thought were in the realm of any kind of criticism, they actually can be interpreted that way. And so, it's important.
They have documented like the response time too for ADHD kids is a little bit, just milliseconds, but like a little bit slower in terms of recognizing someone's facial expression and like responding appropriately. And I think even that we don't realize, right? When we say something and it might be neutral, but we say it with like a tightness in our tone or in our face, whereas our neurotypical child might immediately see that and like skedaddle and do whatever we were saying.
Sure.
The child with ADHD might just not have realized that we're serious in this moment and that you are close to reaching your limit for the day or anything like that, So I think recognizing that difference is so important in terms of being compassionate about, how long it might have taken them to like move forward with the task you were asking them to do or whatever.
Yes. And I wonder if does that have anything to do? I'm just putting this together. Like, I know can be very difficult for someone with ADHD to transition to different tasks. So it's like this to this, like their brain is sometimes hyper focused on something. And so, to be able to transition to something, it can be quite difficult. And so I wonder if sometimes that's the reasoning for that. There's just like, they're thinking of this thing and it's really hard to change to the next thing, even if it's a I don't know, a face that they aren't noticing. Yeah. So and we also need to be very conscious of that. Like transitions can be very difficult for for our ADHD kids too. Like I know you talked, well, yes, you were talking about it's really hard for them to focus or sit down sometimes, but also sometimes our kids can get very focused. And this is when they're really into something. Their brain is, kind of in this flow state almost when they're interested in what they're learning about. Yeah. And so I think when we're homeschooling, I think this is a great gift because your kids are going to learn so much about the things that they're interested in.
Yeah.
Like you can't really stop it from happening, but also you have to be very aware of
derailing that.
Yes. And giving them lots of support at the end of that time when it's time to move on to something else, giving them lots of, time to prepare for a change in what's going to happen next. And then,
people, when they come to my house, always make fun of me because I have the Alexa timers on everything.
Yeah.
Like so many things, like half an hour before something, it'll be like, in 30 minutes, we're going to have our piano lesson. In 15 minutes, we're going to have and for us, that works. Some people like timers, I've heard people tell me when they have a timer, their kid kind of freaks out. And I'm like, you should stick with timers in whatever way works for you. But I promise you, there will be one
that has to be. There has to be.
Like, they might not like seeing a visual timer, but they might like hearing that the time is coming. They might not like having, I don't know, alarm go off, but they might like a touch on the shoulder being like, we have about 5 minutes left. There's all these different things you can do. But I think knowing how that time is passing is important because time blindness is a real issue.
It's real. Yes.
Not realizing that time is passing when you're having a good time and not realizing that this time will pass when something not so entertaining is happening. The frustration of being stuck somewhere can be very high for kids with ADHD.
Very frustrating. It could be the ultimate frustration. Absolutely. I've also heard that even having an analog clock on the wall can be very helpful just visually to see the minutes moving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can be very helpful. We've never really relied on that as much, but I know some people just absolutely depend on that, on the visual. So anyway, and I know there's
a different timer for each of them. That's the visual one, like the kind where, you turn the dial and it shows in red how much time is left and then it just keeps going down. But I have a different one for each of them because when we first started to do it and I tried to say like, okay, everyone's going to work on math for 30 minutes. The stress level for all the different children was very different and it was hard to kind of manage. Nowadays, like I truly let them choose what they're working on at any given time. Usually like if we're at seat work, you can choose whatever seat work you have for the week and go forth and conquer. I mean, if you feel like doing math all day, great. If you feel like doing English all day, I am not going to micromanage.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Having to do 8 subjects a day.
Yes.
But I think that each of them having their own, I just say like, use your timer to help you. And I don't use them anymore myself, like with them. I'm like, how long do you think this should take you is a good question. And then they can say like, I think it'll take 20 minutes. I think it'll take 10. And I'll be like, try and see if you can do it instead of like, definitely get it done. And if it goes off, I always remind them like, okay, well, you can set it again for the same amount of time if you think you didn't get far, or you can set it for like 2 minutes and see if you can wrap it up, and then it becomes like a challenge, not so boring and not such a disappointment to themselves, that they didn't finish in time. It's like, it's fine. It's totally your timer. Like you use it however you want.
That's so empowering. And it goes back to your, believe in your kids. And if they say, this is what I think I can do it in, then, give them that power and let them try it. Another thing that I've, I've definitely noticed with kids with ADHD and people, including myself, is trying things is sometimes the best learning. I mean, it's so powerful to put that the trying, it's almost like an experiment and you find out yourself firsthand if something worked or not. It doesn't matter how many people tell you, the best practice or the best way to do this. You just have to try it and make lots of mistakes. And sometimes that's just, it can look like a lot of tough life lessons, but I would never call any of them failures. It's just really moving forward it's moving forward in a different direction and learning which way works best for you. And then it's the most effective way because you've learned this path is the way that works, because I know I've experienced all the other 10 ways and those didn't work. And now I absolutely 100% know this is the way I want to go with full confidence. And so I think kids with ADHD, when they're given that, like you just gave them that opportunity to like make those choices, it might not look like a success that day. But I would 100% call it, it is a success because they've figured out what doesn't work. Or what does work? I mean, who knows? You never know.
One of the most helpful things recently has been we've been putting Pomodoro timers up on the TV through YouTube on my phone. You can search Pomodoro timer. The whole concept is that, you work for a certain amount of time and you take a break, and then you work for a certain amount of time, take a break, and you do a couple cycles of like 25-5 or, 30-10, and then you take a big long break. And I think my kids have had so much fun picking the Pomodoro timer for the day. Like some of them will have like a color move across the TV screen as you get to completion. Some of them will have a wheel. Some of them will just have, ASMR, a Hogwarts study room or whatever.
Yes.
And they love it. And they've named the different Pomodoro timers. So some of them are like Simon and Fred, and I don't know how. They're just like graphics.
So great.
But like everything you can do to make it seem like you are in a team environment with them. And the things that are giving us difficulty don't necessarily have to be not fun. Maybe there's people who never need a Pomodoro timer and they just know how to work for an hour at a time.
Sure.
None of us in our house are those people. And so this is like a really fun thing. You start the day and you're like, what are we going to like watch today? Like, who's the character? What sound are we going to be in? Are we going to be in a Slytherin room? Are we going to be in a Hufflepuff room? And so you have this easy but productive way to like, help yourself along in like a healthy way. And I think that's important forever, right? Like for our adult life too. I mean, the things we need help with don't all have to be boring and dull and like,
yes. And I've actually used a Pomodoro app like that too, as I kind of think of it as a body double too, which is a lot of ADHDers talk about having a body double, just meaning there's somebody, could be somebody, something, could be a dog, it could be any pet that's near you that just, it's almost just like a companion a little bit and helps you get your work done. And there's just something about that. I often like to work in the same room with my dog, and it's just because I don't know. I feel like I can concentrate more. And this is a real thing for people with ADHD. And I think those Pomodoro apps, or sometimes we put on YouTube, Chill Hop. And it's just a raccoon, going for a walk around a lake, and there's music in the background.
I love that one. I never thought about it in the way you're describing, that it's like a companion, but it totally is.
It is. Yeah.
It's like having a friend with you. Like I always tell my kids, and again, this is because of my son, like always be your own best friend. Like if you would never beat up your friend verbally, for a mistake they made, really for almost any mistake. And I think that's the way it should be for our own self-talk, so for them, I'm always like, when we melt down, when we have a negative thing happen, like who's responsible for that? We are ourselves. Like we are in control of ourselves. When you melt down, you're in control of that. When I melt down, I'm in control of that. But we shouldn't then beat ourselves up for it, because we should be our own best friend. We should say like, hey, that did not go well.
Right.
But like, it's okay. Like, you are loved. You are with your people, it's going to be okay. You love them, you're a good person, like it's fine, like nothing is the end of the world. And I think sometimes, especially when we first come into parenting a child with ADHD and you first experience this pushback, you can feel like it's the end of the world. You can feel like, look at all these other people at the park whose kids are just like doing the things and like coming when called and like not throwing a fit because the swings are occupied or whatever. And I think really learning to understand that it's not the end of the world, that this is just, an opportunity to honestly be so much closer to your kids. It really is. Like,
oh, totally. I can't agree with you more. And I do think I do remember that feeling, especially when our oldest was diagnosed with ADHD. It was our first, experience in the family with the diagnosis. And the psychologist just said, She's probably never gonna, when she gets change at a restaurant or, at a store, is not gonna be able to count it right then and there and make sure it's the right amount because it's just, it's too fast. And, it's just the whole environment is too stimulating, and it would just be it's overwhelming at that point to like count the change, right? And I just thought, oh no, in my mind, just despair. But I now think, oh my goodness, what a small price to pay for the brilliance of that ADHD mind in our family and the contribution this amazing human is bringing to the world and continues and will continue to bring to the world. I'm just like so grateful for that. And I know, I just think kids with ADHD minds just are so brilliant, creative, innovative. I think they're going to be the change makers of the world.
Very often so friendly.
Yes.
They're so willing in spite of all of the negative kind of comments and reprimands and things. They're so willing to have a good time, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
On
sure.
A larger scale. In our little co-op group, we have kids of all different ages. It's a small little group, but one of the moms in my group, and a mom who has, I think, incredibly well-behaved children, is 4 kids who are lovely little boys. And she did me like an enormous kindness because one day she came up and said, I love seeing how Gabriel, who's so much older than the rest, definitely just like brings them like an idea, like there's a game, you're in an open field, there's nothing to do, but like there's a game, there's a whole like adventure planned, it's always spontaneous and it's always something that engages everyone and involves people. And I see that so often with other kids with ADHD, like his friends, they come up with so many, like interesting things, like not the usual. We're never going on just a bike ride. We're never just, at the park. There's always like some sort of LARP adventure going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And they may not sit for the lesson that you had in your mind that you thought was going to be this great, experience. But then later on the day, they might come up with this great discussion topic that you have for like 45 minutes. And you're like, whoa, that was like mind blowing compared to, what I had planned. And so I just think if we can let go of our own expectations in those ways, the learning is really limitless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Letting go of our own idea of how it should be.
Yep.
What it should look like.
Exactly. All right. All right, Tanya. Well, thank you so much for being here. I love talking with you about this so much. So I appreciate it so much. Where can we
talk to you too?
Good. Where can we find you?
The best places to find me are on Instagram at Project Happy Home and on YouTube at Project Happy Home. YouTube has actually just started the I don't know what you call them, but where you have like a hashtag thing where it's at something.
Oh, yeah.
So you can use those now on YouTube and find people. But if you wanted to hear about ADHD in particular, because you have a child with ADHD or you look ways to manage one thing or another, I have a specific ADHD playlist on there.
Awesome.
And then everything else is homeschool related pretty much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Let's move on to our LTWs, loving this week's. Angela, what are you loving this week?
All right. I am loving an audiobook.
Nice.
It is called Bad Vibes Only by Nora McInerney.
Okay.
Nora, I just recently found her and love her. So she has her own podcast called Terrible Things for Asking.
Okay, yes.
And she talks about grief, and she's also funny. So those two things kind of go together on her podcast. But I don't always listen to her podcast, but her book is it's just a series of essays, sort of memoirish.
Love that.
She's written a few different books. So I'm probably going to go back. I don't know if this is similar to her other books because she's a little bit younger than us. She's probably, I don't know, late 30s, maybe 40.
Okay.
She's a Minnesotan. So, and her voice is like so comforting to me. So she has that Minnesota accent, but also
I love it.
It's like also her voice is soothing. So I just love listening to her, and I loved her book. I related to like all the essays. I related to them completely. And it was funny and fun to listen to. It was like a fun listen. So I love that. And also she's a great follow on Instagram. She's one of my new favorites. And I think her Instagram handle is Nora Borealis. And
Okay.
she's good there too. So, and her podcast.
Yeah.
She's my
Okay.
new favorite.
All the things that you just described are just that's like, checks off a lot of boxes that I would like in a good audiobook. So
yes, I think you would like it, Marin, because it's an easy, fun listen.
Okay, great.
It will take your mind off other things, but also like it's relatable.
So awesome.
Super relatable.
Okay.
So, okay. What are you loving, Marin?
Okay. I'm loving, the box office winner, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Oh, yeah. You saw it?
I did.
Okay.
Yes. Have you seen it yet?
No.
Okay.
But a couple people in my family have.
It's amazing. It is
okay.
So amazing. And I mean, because I loved the first one so much too, I came in like just on fire for this, and it did not disappoint. It did not disappoint at all. In fact, I was blown away.
Oh, wow.
Especially by the acting of the whole story is surrounded. I mean, it's based on the women. It is a women-led cast, and these actors are phenomenal. I know that oftentimes action movies like this don't usually get the Oscar, the actors don't get nominated or whatever. Yeah. I just think they need to, I really hope that changes this year, especially Angela Bassett.
Oh yeah, I heard.
Like best performance ever by her.
That's awesome.
And Letitia Wright, who plays Shuri, who, is stepping up into this, her new role. And it is just phenomenal. Great. I love that they just you can tell they just put their all into this movie. Everybody who was involved in it just did it, nailed it. It was so great.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear, because it had like big shoes to fill.
And
really
after
Chadwick Boseman died, you wonder how they're going to handle that. So I'm just so glad I do want to see that. Definitely.
Yeah. You're going to love it. And I know you might not go to all the Marvel movies, but this is the one.
But I will this one.
Yes, you would this one. And anybody else, if you're in that, in that situation where you're like, I'm not going to go see, like Avengers 5 or whatever. That's totally, I get that. But this is, I think you're going to really love this one.
Okay. That's
a great story too. It just, the story in and of itself, just this movie is so great. So even if you haven't seen any of them, you will love it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you to our 3 sponsors, Blossom and Root, OutSchool, and Night Zookeeper. Be sure to check out all of their links in our show notes.
This podcast is created and hosted by Angela Sizer and Marin Gorse. We are listener supported. To get extra content and the Back to School Summit free with your membership, go to patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined. Subscribe to our newsletter and get our free top 100 inclusive book list at homeschoolunrefined.com/newsletter. You can find Marin on Instagram at unrefinedmarin and at Always Learning with Marin. Find Angela at unrefinedangela.